Well, thanks a lot for staying with us here on Sunrise Live on E on this Friday morning. Now, in our issue of the week discussion today, we just look at the three largest banks in South Africa, which includes obviously some foreign ones, which have been referred to the tribunal for prosecution by the Competition Commission. Now, this follows after the investigation by the Commission on the case of price fixing and collusion since April 2015. So, to discuss the matter further, we've got in studio Byron Lotter, is an analyst from Vestact, and on the line we'll be joined by Israel Mkhize. He is from Bugundana Consulting Group, and he'll be joining us for that conversation as well. We also invited the Competition Commission, but they declined to be part of the interview. However, that does not stop us from actually having the conversation this morning. So, in that instance, make sure to give us a call on 011 447 1742 or 2570. Also, do feel free to leave your comments on our Facebook as well as on our Twitter pages as we really get to the bottom of the matter. Byron, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
That's a very interesting story that has come out, and I mean, bringing some light to the state of the economy in South Africa and how easy manipulatable it actually is. Looking at the various instances and how it actually rated such a report even coming to the fold, to the layman, to the individual that's you and me, what does this actually mean?
So basically what the banks have been doing is they get given a spot rate by Reuters. It's actually determined in the 4 a.m. every morning in London. And that gets traded by the banks. You know, when the banks have clients who need dollars, they will offer them a rate, but they'll take a spread. So they will offer them a rate slightly worse than the spot rate.
Okay, so they get given a spot rate. In other words, the figure, the amount that it would cost to actually purchase that dollar. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then they give it to those who would necessarily, who would want to purchase, the clients would want to purchase the dollars, whichever country that is or whichever client that is. But they will increase or magnify the actual rate in itself to manipulate.
Which is fine. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But basically what they were doing is they were chatting to the other banks and colluding on how big they would make that spread, because it's a competitive market. So essentially, the wider the spread, the more cut the banks will take.
Yeah.
So if you're taking a wide spread from someone, a client, the client could go to another bank and say, these guys are offering me a terrible spread. What are you offering? But because they were colluding, they were all offering a similar type spread. So this is the way the banks were making extra profits from clients. And it does affect the average man on the street, because these are big importing businesses that would be buying dollars. You know, for example, Mr. Price would be buying dollars to go and buy textiles from all over the world. As a consumer, those little cuts that the banks are taking will be pushed onto you, because essentially
Inflation.
It's a small form of inflation.
So in other words, they sell a bigger or more of an exorbitant amount to actually make a profit. In turn, Mr. Price for using you as an example this morning, would purchase the actual dollars so that they can buy the raw materials needed for their finished products. But because they have to cover the cost of operations, then it filters down to you, because
their
you
rands
have to
are
actually
worth slightly less because of the banks are giving them less.
Yeah. So then because of that, and to cover their costs, they need to now increase their prices in the store, which you and me purchase, and therefore directly implicating on my pocket.
It's tiny in the bigger scheme of things, but consistently done, you can see how easy it is for the banks to manipulate and make money. I mean, I'm a consistent moaner because I can see the spot rate. It's very easy. You can Google rand dollar and it'll come up and give you the spot rate. And if you're buying forex from the bank, you'll see there'll be a difference. So you'll see the spot rate say 13 to the dollar, but the bank will give you 13.20, and this is if you're buying dollars. So it's essentially saying the rand is actually weaker than what it is. Like I said, there's nothing illegal about that, but if they colluding together, they can make that spread wider and take more profits.
I want us to speak about that whole issue around the rand being made to look weaker, because that in a sense now filters down to even our news reporters actually cover these stories.
That's not what they were doing. They weren't manipulating the spot. They don't have enough pull there's $90 billion of trade in the rand alone, dollar trade per day.
Yeah.
There's no ways they can manipulate the actual currency. I mean, you look at the Chinese economy, the Chinese government were trying to manipulate their currency for many years with all their pull, and they couldn't, just because it's too liquid. What they were manipulating was the spread they were taking around the currency. They weren't actually manipulating the currency price. So that must be clear to everyone. Yeah.
Well, we're going to actually get more further into the matter, because perhaps the question this morning in South Africa is, why should I care? And why should this be making headlines? And of course, with this, we're going to go over to the line this morning. We are joined by Israel Mkhize. Israel is from Bungindana Consulting Group. Israel, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I mean, this is a story that has made light of certain conversations, but also look at the financial sector in South Africa. We've seen an issue come up again with ratings agencies such as Moody's, which has been said to be manipulating or selling off the ratings in itself. So can the financial sector really be trusted at this present moment, or should we really be looking at decentralizing?
No, I think it should be trusted. You must also understand that we operate in a global standard financial money market as well as currency market. To some extent, what you see in the money market and the currency market in South Africa from the banking is what you find in most developed economies, developed countries. So in that sense, on the question of trust, yes, there should be trust. Number two, the money market and the currency market is very complex. For instance, you have to first differentiate between different currency trading markets. You've got the measuring currencies, for instance, your dollar, your pound, your euro, your yen of Japan, and your yuan of China, and pula here in Sub-Sahara. It trades in a different way. Then you've got your ordinary so-called currencies that are trading in many stock markets, in bonds, etc. So the banks, what they do, as my colleague recently has explained, they would then, if you want to buy something, let's say you have an import, a watch from Dubai, or you're buying furniture or wood or whichever raw material from another country, you have to go to the bank and then you say, I'm buying something from America in dollars. Then you have to convert. You are buying, when you convert it, you're basically buying that currency. So the only problem is, again, on the question of the spread, when the prices are slightly pushed a little bit higher, which then makes, which affects the buying power of the rand. Otherwise, to some extent, in capitalist and developed economies, it's somehow a common practice.
Okay, well, it is indeed a common practice. Perhaps the question then is, it just because it's common, does it make it ethical, and does it make it right? And the question now that is posed is that in often cases we look at it from a corporate perspective, right? So in other words, if a big corporate actually purchases dollars, but what about those business individuals? I mean, for example, I travel and I purchase dollars, or I purchase whatever foreign currency in itself. If that currency, for whatever reason, is being manipulated, I'm not getting the spot rate, as you mentioned. I'm getting a rate that has been slightly inflated to cover services by the banks. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they're allowed to charge you a spread.
Yeah.
They're offering you a service. You know, you can go get dollars elsewhere, but I don't know where you'd be able to find. You know, there are other competitors. And also, if you are transferring money overseas, you know, you don't want to have to get dollars, put it in your briefcase and take it over to New York. These banks are providing an essential service. I mean, we're a small business and we use one of these banks to send money to New York. And it's imperative to our business. So they do offer an essential service, and they do have a right to take a spread. Yeah. Otherwise, they wouldn't offer the service in the first place.
But they don't have a right to collude. In other words, the 3 banks or 4 banks or 5 banks don't have a right to say, we're going to make the spot rate about 15 rand or whatever against the $1, and we're all going to make it that same price so that this individual does not necessarily have a choice.
Exactly.
Because that's
illegal. So it's anti-competitive. Yeah, and that's exactly why the Competition Commission is getting involved.
So then is this percentage, 10% of annual turnover, actually enough? And this is coming in light of the fact that during the State of the Nation address, President Jacob Zuma was actually speaking about clamping down on price fixing, clamping down about monopolizing sectors of industries by those individuals that would seek to really hold everybody at ransom, including you and me. So is this enough?
Well, it's still a bit vague on whether it's 10% of 1 year's revenues or since 2007, where they believe this started. It could be too much. I mean, you've seen what happened in 2008 during the financial crisis, where the US government actually had to bail the banks out. You can't have these banks going insolvent if you're going to fine them too much, because essentially it's the average man on the street that's going to lose his money, because that's the money that the banks are holding. I think what they'll have to do is they'll actually have to look into the specific divisions of the banks and fine them based on, say, the Forex division of Standard Bank, on that division's revenues. And I think that's fair, because that's the division that has been, colluding and making those extra profits. Those specific bankers would be getting bonuses based on their division's success. So you target that specific division, and that's, like I said, we'll target the people who are involved directly.